Hi everyone, in this video I'm finally going to do a full-scale review of the Panasonic GH4, which is a micro four thirds camera, which is about £1,000 for the body alone, and then you've got to add the price of the lenses on it. I've been using it for the last 6 months, both professionally and recreationally, and here's my kind of in-depth review of it. But before you get bored already, if you don't have the time to watch the full in-depth review, here's my quick review, my too long didn't watch version. So what I would say is that this is a fantastic camera. It's incredibly good. For the recreational shooters, I would really recommend this. If anybody is saying I want a fantastic camera but they're not really that into like white balance and all this and stuff, this camera in auto everything does an amazing job to quite a few times where, for me using this at home, this is my go-to camera. It's also so light and so small that you can take it anywhere and it's not a burden on you, unlike having a big fat digital SLR. The battery life is fantastic, the image quality is incredibly good at the lower ISOs. The noise is a bit duff higher up, and there are, if you go into professional levels of photos and videos, there's a couple of annoying little traits that this has which makes it a little bit difficult to work with. But in terms of if you're wanting to buy a single camera which is going to be your go-to camera for going out with your family, going out with your friends, I would 100% recommend this. And although it is £1,000, that is a lot of money, but it is incredibly powerful, and this can definitely be the camera that takes you from being a total amateur in auto mode to becoming a full-time professional videographer and photographer just with this one camera. So this is, they talk about bridge cameras. I would say this is like the bridge from beginner to expert. You've got the full range of abilities in this. Okay, so that's just my quick review of this. Now I'm going to go into the more in-depth review in this in my next video, or just straight after this. So if you've been watching my channel on YouTube, you'll have noticed I've done a whole pile of videos with the GH4. I talked about some good things, some annoying things, some things which have blown me away, some things which I just can't understand why it is that way. So let's go through the main things. It's auto ability. First of all, if you're using it for auto, oh my god, I actually can't believe how useful this is. The amount of times where instead of me thinking what aperture, what shutter speed, what this, that, just sticking it into intelligent auto, which it has, and just letting it do what it does with its focusing, with its everything, it just does so well. So if you've got a brand new baby, and you want to take simple videos of them, that's absolutely, this is the camera that will get you fantastic shots. I would also recommend a super wide angle lens so you can get nice and close. But in terms of just like pick up and start shooting, this is the camera that, this camera I would say has a fantastic auto ability. So if you are in a situation where you just kind of go, oh, newsworthy story, getting this out and just going record, you will get what you need from that shot. The auto focusing on the face detection feature that it's got is good. It does have a couple of flaws though. It can be a little bit searching. So again, if you're doing professional video, you don't have any auto focus going on. But if you're just taking videos of your kids at the park or something like that, yeah, this will do you fantastically. What I'm impressed with is its ability to face track, so it can tell if I come closer, it's able to see that I'm closer, or if I move around, it's able to do auto-focusing on my face. Now this is considered to be like a prosumer, consumer level camera, so it's got a couple of fun functions like the creative mode and stuff like that, which you're never going to use. Hopefully you're never going to use, or you'll flick through it and go, oh, that was interesting, and then ignore it. So there's a couple of functions you just never really need to use. Auto, and here's the creative one. There's 3 custom set buttons. The custom set buttons, you can set the either for videos or the photos or whatever settings you want. However, they are incredibly annoying for me, because if you go, right, I've got all this set, and I go from one room to another, and while I'm going along, I'll just turn the camera off to save the battery. If I've had any settings changed while shooting, it reverts all the way back to the same. So if I'm shooting, let's say, outside, and I've set up the camera, and then I go, right, I'm going to go inside, turn off the camera, go back in. If I then turn it back on, the custom settings revert all the way back to the very original custom settings, which could be completely different. So the white balance, the shutter speed and all that, so you have to reset all that again, which can be a total pain. And even worse, if you just flick from custom 1 to custom 2 to custom 3 and back, you'll lose all the settings which you had just moments ago. So that's something which is just a feature. It's something which I'm never going to use now. The custom set buttons, never really going to use them whatsoever. Okay, so for example, on this one, I'm on custom 1 or custom 3, doesn't really matter. But if I say, right, white balance is terrible, I'll change it to indoors. No, that's shade of just, we'll change it to tungsten, and then definitely need it brighter. Cool, set, liking that. Start doing my photos, start doing my videos, doing whatever I want. But then let's just say I go, hold on, I'll just have a little look. What does custom 2 have on it? Oh no, that's just photos, not interested in that. Go back to custom, right, hold on. So white balance, need to sort that out again. Then ISO, you get the point. It doesn't stay if you just click from one to the other, or if you turn it off and on. And it's the same with like the shutter as well. So if I go, if I have any change of exposure, a slight twist of that, bringing it back, it's totally different again. So that's a slight annoying thing about custom functions, and I'm just never going to use them. Also, the next odd thing really is the fact that if you're in PASM mode, however, if you click video when you're in like the record button for video, if you're in PASM mode, it instantly becomes auto. So that is a little bit of a pain in the butt. And for some reason, in any of these modes, you don't get the opportunity to use 4K video or the Cine D or Cine-like D or Cine-like V picture profile settings. Why? I don't know. So what they've done, they've got a whole extra button or extra twist on the top for video manual mode, where that unlocks 4K video. That also unlocks the Cine-like D and Cine-like V picture profiles, which are nice flat profiles, so you're able to edit quite well with it. However, you then don't have auto ISO. So if you want to do 4K with an auto ISO, you don't have that option. Annoying, and I don't really know why they thought that was a good idea. Okay, so here's the options where you've got manual, shutter speed, aperture, program modes and all that kind of stuff. And if I click the function button and I look at the types of video we've got all 200 megabytes, 100 megabytes, 50 megabytes, that's all 50p, 25p, but oddly, we don't have 4K, and that's in all of them there. So the only time you get 4K is when you switch to video mode up here, and then now I've got the option to go 4K, which is a little bit of a reduced field of view. But however, in 4K, there's no auto ISO. So that's a slight annoyance. However, if I'm shooting, for example, in any of these modes, shutter, aperture, or program, let's say I think the exposure, let's say I want a dark, moody look to this place. I'll put it into manual mode. So let's say I want it fairly moody, 50th of a second, and I want it kind of dark, 400th of a second. If I were to take a photo, that's the photo that you get. However, if I then click video, watch both the aperture, shutter speed, ISO disappear. So at the moment it's saying it's like -3 EV. If I click record, oh, it's a nice bright image. So even though it's in manual, if I click record, suddenly it reverts to a full auto camera settings. That's annoying. It's also only in these settings where I have the option to kind of go like, oh, I can take a photo or I can take a video. In the actual video setting here, there's no option for me to be able to take a photo. If I press the shutter, it's now just recording a video. The next cool thing that it's got is that in one of the settings that you've got in this, you've got ability to do a variable frame rate. So you can go from, so your normal, let's say 25, 30 frames a second, you can actually push it all the way up to 96 frames a second at full HD video, which is great. However, you lose, what do you lose? You lose audio. You get no audio. So that's bums. You can also slow it down, so you get down to like 2 frames a second. So that's almost kind of like a time-lapse kind of shot that you can get going on there, which is very cool. Also, if you have it just in the normal settings, so it's 25 frames a second, and you have it in manual focus, you're able to slow the shutter speed slower than the frame rate, which is like, I don't understand. How does that work? So in other words, you can take, let's say it's 25 frames a second, you would normally be limited to 1/25 of a second exposure for each shot. However, this lets you go slower, all the way down to half a second, or half a second per frame. So I'm like, how does that work? What it does, it just stores the information that it gets from the sensor in the buffer and then just pumps it out. So in other words, if you're doing it at a 1/12 of a second, it stores a 1/12 of a second and pumps that out for 2 frames into the actual video. So it's a bit weird, and it's kind of like drunk cam, but it's something to be aware of whenever you're using your manual focus. The touch screen on this, I say, is fantastic. You've got so many options there at your fingertips. With that, you've also got Wi-Fi, which with the Wi-Fi app you can get on your iPod, it works brilliantly. There is a little bit of a faffing getting it to work in the first place, but once it's working, it works great. I've been really quite impressed, and there's almost no lag whatsoever. And this is how to get the flippy out screen. Fully articulating. We can rotate it, fully close. Is the touch screen, so I can do a focus point. That's all good. If I stick it into manual focus, we have a zoom function there. If I were to zoom as well, got that all going there, which is nice. If I then, I can move the actual histogram, which is always handy. Let's see, I want it down there. Done. Oh. And I've got other things like this where I can point it up or down, which is always handy. And also things like changing the ISO on it there. Very good. At the same time, if I just press the function button up here, that brings in a whole pile of extra options. So I can change the aspect ratio. I can change whether it's raw or not. I can change whether it's face detecting. Or if I change this one, I can go F2, all the different types. I've also got the options down here to change all the options, which are all slidey, including the white balance and type of video format. Go for standard, and if I click something like the white balance, I can click the top button and change the white balance there. Nice. And here's the view from inside. The actual hello. So we've got the audio monitors there as well. if I click the menu button, got all the options there. If I click record, now I'm recording. Just like that. Additionally, I've used this in a nightclub event or a music gig event where it was pretty much right beside giant 6-foot speakers or amps or whatever you audio people call them. So I was getting blown away. I had earplugs in and I was still kind of deaf. This still managed to pick up audio. It was astonishing. Yes, there are ways of getting better audio by using a certain type of mic or a Zoom H4 or something and stuff like that. But if you're just kind of going, I'm going to a gig and I'm going to do some videos, this, astonishing how well it's able to capture audio automatically. Just fantastically. And that's just from the inbuilt microphones inside, not even having to use a mic on top of the camera. Okay, the next thing I would talk about is in terms of ease of use and functions. Sometimes something that's the ease of use, it means you've got very few options. This, if you put it into auto, it's very easy to use. If you're going, I want to have a little play around, I want to do 4K video, this is definitely a camera which requires you to have a dig through the manual, the instruction book, because there are so many options, so many slight differences between one setting to the next that you're just like, I have no idea. Even if you're just going for, I just want to do some HD video, you've got 4 different types of codec to use. You've got MOV, you've got MP4, LPMC or something like that. And then you've got AVC HD as well. So you've got all those. And then within those, you've got different bit rates, you've got different frames per second, you've got different, whether it's full HD or HD, and only a certain couple of them do 720, and only if you're in the manual mode, or the manual video mode, you get 4K. Oh my God, it can be so incredibly fiddly and confusing that if you go from one setting to another, you kind of go, wait, what? Am I still in the same codec? Am I using a different platform? What is going on? It's not entirely obvious what you want to do. Having all these options is great. What we'd say is just check, I'll do a video of what I would say is just the best options or settings to have your camera at. Just choose them and don't veer off the course with them, because it can take forever. The next thing is the frames per second. This can do 7 frames a second in RAW and 12 frames a second in the other version, JPEG, that's what it is. Again, there's quite a few times where I've been going, come on, let's take 50 frames a second or so, or fast frames a second, and it's just not happened. So you have to go through the menus, go, right, so I need the LCD off, I need it on, I need to move this button, it may need to change the shutter speed, I need to do all this stuff. So it's not a simple case of just kind of going, oh yeah, fast frame a second. Brrr. Sometimes I go, and it goes, photo, photo, photo. You're like, okay, what out of about 15 or 16 different settings do I need to figure out to make sure I'm getting this working? So again, so many options, which can get infuriating if you're wanting to just quickly change from one thing to the next. However, for video guys, having all these options is fantastic. Yeah, you do have so many kind of like, ooh, these are great. And also, even if you have this in auto, there's so many options which are suddenly open to you, which you didn't have in the manual choices. For example, there's a steady shot hold where it takes about 6 photos. If you're in like a dark situation, it will take 6 photos and it will either choose the best or merge them so you get a good image. There's more tech in here than what 99% of the users will ever be able to figure out. On the front of the camera, you don't have a huge amount of things going on here. So from there, this side, pretty much nothing. And on this side, it's just your button to take off your lenses. Bingo, there's the thing. Let's do a fast photo. That's how it goes. And if we go for super loads of exposures, let's see it. Nothing happens. If I then change it to manual mode or to a raw file, this is what it looks like. Pretty nuts. However, if I want to do super duper fast, I need to go into, change the quality from raw down to a JPEG, and now I've got super high available. Let's listen to that now. 3, 2, 1. Pretty darn fast there. On the side of the camera, you've got a hole for a normal mic. You've got that one for your headphones, which is handy. And then you've got mini HDMIs there. That is annoying. On the top of your camera, you've got your single photo, multiple photo, then your bracketing photos, then your timed photo, and then your time-lapse photos there. You've also got audio for your left and for your right, and also your button for your flash. If I press it on, bing, there it goes. That's quite sturdy. There. On here you've got your video mode, you've got your manual, speed, aperture, program, auto, intelligent auto, creative, then your custom 1, 2 and 3, which is just too many. You also have a button to press, so now you can't wiggle it. You need to bing, done, fine. Here you've got your function button, which you can program to be anything, which is also your Wi-Fi button, white balance, ISO and exposure compensation, and you can do all the stuff there, and there's your shutter up here. Other things which make this camera fantastic is the fact that it's got things like peaking, which means it tells you what is in focus. You can have it in, again, you've got options of colors, you've got high level peaking, low level peaking, blah, 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 blah. Next thing of interest is the peaking that we've got. As you can see, the focus, there are these little blue lines coming around things, and we can move the peaking, let's see, over here to the bridge. And we've got this very strong blue line saying that is sharp, that is in focus. Yet if I go out of focus, no signs of peaking. Bring into focus. There are lots of blue lines saying that is definitely in focus. I do like also, I can just touch the screen to do a photo. So I can just go, boom. You've also, what else have you got? Zebras, again. So zebras are just something which are just like lines that pass down bits which are overexposed. However, you can set it so it's, is it 85%, is it 90, 95%, 100%, 105%? Again, a million options within the actual simple, ooh, I'll have some zebras, ooh, I'll have some peaking. It just goes on quite a while. Now, in terms of ISO, this is something which I've come from a full frame background. What I'm shooting with just now is the Canon 5D Mark II. I used to have the Nikon D700, and this definitely is nowhere near the ISO capabilities of those cameras. Another thing which everyone should be wary about is the fact is, if you are thinking, hey, I will mix two cameras together, this and a Canon or something like that, the ISO profiles are different. What I mean by that is, although this camera will say 800 ISO, it may not actually be 800 ISO. If you go into DxO Mark, they do kind of in-depth sensor reviews, and what they've found that this is actually almost a whole stop less than what it is. So at ISO 800, this is actually only recording at ISO 490 or something. So not exactly a whole stop less, but if you're thinking, hey, I've got that ISO 1000, I'll put this at ISO 1000, same aperture, same shutter, you're going to get a different exposure, this one being the darker one. So that's something you've got to either just boost the ISO with this, or just use only one sort of camera type. The other thing is the way that this renders colors, white balance, and contrast and all that kind of stuff is completely different from Canon and Nikon and all the other cameras that I've got. So if you are doing a certain type of shoot, you're doing it with one camera rather than mixing two different styles of cameras. So like Panasonic to the Canon, I can't use them together. What I could do is one for capturing the audio and one for capturing the actual video. The other option I've done in a recent video is I did the Canon for the knife big wide panning shots, and then I used this one with a different lens for the kind of object shots, so the B-roll kind of stuff. And you can, because it's a different lens, it's different focal things, and you can just work it out so it's not too far away from the working into one single video file. But in terms of going shot to shot to shot to shot in the same kind of style stuff, it's not going to work. In this camera, you've got a whole bunch of options in terms of how you can create dynamic range as well. So in video, one of the problems with Canon just now at the moment is that the dynamic range of the video files is pump compared to what you get with a raw photo. With a photo, you can edit it and you can bring in highlights really, really well. This camera has got a whole pile of options for you to enhance the image's dynamic range very, very easily. However, obviously that does make it a much kind of grayer, flatter image, and you do lose punch and contrast. So a lot of people go, oh, I know, I want a really big dynamic range, and then they'll take a video and go, it's really dull and boring, I don't understand what's going on. But it does give you a lot more option for editing afterwards. And I've done a couple of videos on my channel already showing you just how flat and dull the image was, but how much you're able to push the actual video files that come out of this in the kind of dull formats, how you can push it to really bring up both exposure and contrast and just punch into the image really, really well. But again, if you're just a recreational shooter, don't bother with that. Just stick it in cine-like V mode for vibrant or standard mode, picture profiles, and you get fantastic images straight away. Also, the lenses with the Panasonic they have a communication with the actual camera. So whenever the camera takes a photo, the camera knows the lens and it knows its characteristics, and it has an auto in-camera raw file cooking. So it cooks the raw file a little bit. So if, for example, this 7 to 14mm lens, whenever I'm taking a photo with it, I'm going, oh my god, there's no distortion in this whatsoever. There's barely any chromatic aberration. Oh, this is fantastic. That's because it's actually ever so slightly cooked the raw files, because it's gone, oh, we know there's this curve, we'll sort that out. We know it has chromatic aberration, we'll sort that out. But it's something you will never notice or have to deal with. And you would have to find some obscure software somewhere to download the raw files to see how much of a distortion there actually is with the lenses or with all that. So it's giving you straight out the camera fantastic shots which don't need lens corrections or chromatic aberration reductions. So that is a real bonus and speed up of workflow that you can get with this camera if you're doing photos. And obviously that's carried on through into doing the videos as well. So it corrects any like barrel or pin cushion distortion that you can get with the lenses. Additionally, I've shot with this camera for multiple days without having to recharge the battery, which I've just been kind of astonished with. It just goes on and on and on. So it's a solid battery that lasts forever in there. The other great thing with the Panasonic GH4 is that for a very, very cheap adapter, this one I got from Photodiox. It cost me £25. I can now, so this little adapter, I can now stick on any Nikon lens that I want onto this. Obviously, it's what we call a dumb adapter. So in other words, it doesn't change the focus, it doesn't turn on the image stabilization, it doesn't do anything really. It's just purely, I can now attach that and have manual focus and all that kind of stuff. But it does give you that option there. With this 70-200, because this is a 2x crop factor in terms of the sensor, this then becomes a 140 to 400mm lens, which means you get a super telephoto effect. Then also on top of that, if you buy a slightly more expensive adapter called the Metabone Speed Booster, which costs about £300 to £400. So yeah, we're talking about like 20 times the cost of this. You can get one where what it does is it's called a focal reducer. So instead of this being a 70-200 turning into a 140 to 400, It then becomes somewhere in between, becomes like a 100 to 300 via magic, but with that you get an increase in exposure. Somehow it becomes a whole stop brighter. So this f2.8 could become a 300mm f2 in terms of brightness. Now that's a pretty enticing feature, and you know, an f2 to an f2.8, that's one stop. And on that, so that could just mean that you've got a slightly lower ISO. But if you're outside, if you're a wilderness shooter, if you're maybe a wildlife shooter, and the stuff you're shooting is still, and you're not having to do autofocus, because that's going to be a nightmare. Because you can't do autofocus, but if you're not having to do manual focus too much, maybe it's a stationary subject, 200mm f2, that's good. Or the same could be said for if you're using an ultra wide angle lens. This is a Tokina 11 to 16mm. This then becomes, well, it's an f2.8. This could be an f2 ultra wide lens as well. So that would definitely be a heck of a lot brighter than the f4 7 to 14mm that you get from the Panasonic already. However, you'd then have to correct stuff like barrel or pin cushion distortion and chromatic aberration, because there'd be no communication with the camera and the lens. Okay, so lastly, to finish off this opinion related review of this, the question is this a camera which I'm going to keep? So for example, you'll know, or some of you will know, that I sold my Nikon D700 and a couple of the Nikon lenses I had just because I just wasn't using it. And for all my professional work, I use the Canon 5D Mark II, and I've already got the 16 to 35mm lens for that. So there wasn't just that much happening with the Nikon D700. So with this, what am I going to keep this or am I not going to keep this? That is a tricky question, because there's a couple, again, with this lens, it's a bit of a flaw. There's too much of a bulb. I can't, bulbous kind of end. I can't put like filters on the front, so that's a little bit annoying. So I may change the lens. However, what I would say is that it's kind of brought back a little bit of the joy of photography for me, this camera. It's because the Nikon D700 was a big, heavy camera. A fantastic camera, and I will be renting one again whenever I've got my next weddings coming up. But in terms of just having a nice little camera that takes great shots that you can take anywhere and put anywhere, this has really kind of been an eye-opener for me. Most of the time I use my GoPro or my iPod. This is a camera which is going to replace my iPod. So that's not to say, oh, it's better than an iPod. Wow, it's £1,000. But in terms of ease of use, user friendliness when just using it in auto mode, this is definitely a fantastic camera for having at home and just using for fun. And that's the thing about this. In terms of professional work, it's a real 50-50. If you don't have a camera already, I would say 100% absolutely get this. It'll be cheaper than the Canon 5D Mark, whatever you get, and so much easier to use and easier to throw about and just shove in a bag, stick in the back of a car, drive away somewhere. You can stick in a glove box, you know, that kind of stuff, compared to a big heavy camera like the Canons. So professionally, if you don't already have gear, I would again 100% recommend this. And professionally, you're going, we want 4K, we want 16 megapixel images, we want fast frames a second, we're shooting sports and all that kind of stuff. It's absolutely fantastic. If on the other hand, you already have something like the Canon 5D Mark II or the Nikon D810, I highly doubt you would ever use this professionally. This really, if you're already a professional and you're using high-end gear, you're still going to carry on using your high-end gear. This is in no way going to be replacing my 5D Mark II or the Mark III or the Nikon D750 or the D810 or even the D610 in terms of their ISO ability. Those ones are amazing. This one's ISO, not that great. But in terms of its power inside the actual camera, the things that it can do, mean it's a definite worthy worthy camera to bring along with you for situations where you think, oh, maybe my Canon can't do that, or maybe, oh, I just want 90 frames a second, or 50 or 60 frames a second full HD, which the Canons don't do, or if you're wanting something which you can just put anywhere and just not worry about it. So for me, I was thinking, oh, I'm not really going to be using this for my photography, my professional photography stuff. However, I've been quite a few times where I would drive in my car to the location, and then both this camera and this camera are sitting beside me, and I'll pick up this one. So it 100% definitely can be used professionally in both photographic and in video mode, but I wouldn't use it as my only camera if I've already got the Canon 5D Mark II. However, I absolutely 100% recommend that you could use this as your only camera. And for £1,000, you would expect that as well. Price-wise though, yeah, okay, we're going for £1,000 here. Over the next year or two, I'm not thinking that's really going to drop too much. The Panasonic GH3, the version before this, I think will drop a lot more, but the fact that this is the one with 4K video, 30 frames a second and fast frames a second, that any future upgrades are not going to deteriorate the quality of this one that much at all. This is going to be a solid buy for a long time. This is kind of a future-proofed camera for a substantial amount of time. Substantial amount of time, I'm talking about 3-4 years worth of use. So let's go back to the question, am I going to keep this? Am I going to use this? There is a bit of me tempted to kind of go, maybe I should just sell it and then use the money for a Sony A7S for that super ISO ability. But with the Sony, you're just spending so much money on such a tiny body, which has a whole pile of issues already with it, and a rubbish battery and all that kind of stuff, and ridiculous massive lenses, which are expensive, and you can't really adapt. Like here, I can adapt any lens onto this camera, from it like Canon, Sony, Nikon lenses I can put onto this. With Sony, you're much more restricted. So am I going to keep it? Yes, yeah, I'm definitely going to keep it. And for me, my YouTube video channel is just filled with unlisted videos, which you guys don't see, of just me playing with my baby. And this is the camera which I'm going to be using for that, for everything. So there you go, there's the long and extended review of the Panasonic GH4. I hope that was informative. If you've got any other questions, drop them in the comment section below and I'll see if I can help you out there. But otherwise, it's a worthy, I would almost call it an investment camera. And if you haven't got one already, if you haven't got a camera already, this is like the number one I would say to get and to learn from and expand your whole horizon of knowledge with photography and videography. This is like, totally photos and videos. Hope that helps. Okay, cheers, bye-bye.